here. I know you have very comfortable couches back there, and you'll be able to go back to the comfortable couches again. I'm Murat Köprülü, and I'm chairman of the American Immigrant Society. On behalf of the board of the American Immigrant Society and, of course, the board of the Ellis Island Honor Society, we are very proud to be here together as two institutions, two nonprofit institutions who have been created only 30 years apart. Ellis Island is 30 years older than we are. As some of you know, here from the Cubico community, we're only 16 months old, the American Immigrant Society. But we have some kind of mojo going, as some of you know. And we're very happy to be right here, actually, in Soho at Cubico. Because right here in this little community of this building, we have, of course, the vibe that New York represents, which is the immigrant vibe community, becoming a part of the community, becoming a part of what America is all about. That's what the American Immigrant Society tries to do. Some of you have been very kind and given us some pointers about our website. We're always in formation in terms of what we're doing, but we pay a lot of attention to social media, as you all know. Please go to the American Immigrant Society website and you'll see the scroll of all our social media. We strive to do one thing, and that is hashtag change the narrative. Change the narrative. The narrative that is being told to certain parts of the American citizenry is wrong. Immigrants are vital for the prosperity of the nation. Not only the economic prosperity of the nation, but the moral and cultural prosperity of the nation, right? That's what makes this country actually great. That's what makes this country admired throughout the world. You go to any country in the world and they say, what makes America great for? Well, they've been welcoming our people for the last 4 centuries. This is what America is all about. We all know this, by the way. And it's not that we're going to be explaining this to those who already know it, but we're slowly spreading the message to the right people. And we're trying to do it without kind of bitching and moaning, just sort of taking it easy and in a deliberate way, reaching the right circles and making the points, the economic points, the cultural points, the psychological points, the heuristic, the moral points. And we're doing that in a very deliberate way. But we also want to do it with all the best people possible. And that's why you're here tonight. And this is exactly the kind of thing we want. We want brainstorming. We want all of you to be part of our community. We want you to sign up. There are sign-up sheets. If you want to do something different, you want your voice to be heard, volunteer, become part of the brainstorming sessions that we're creating. I want to thank tonight, of course, the following, which made all this possible. A lot of things you see all around here, donated. Tremendously charitable people have come together to make this happen tonight. I want to thank Kate Haas-Monte, of course, and her team from our partner organization, the Ellis Island Honor Society. I want to thank Courtney Coburn and the entire team at Sunshine Sachs who put the event together with us. Of course, Ali Baba is here. I'm going to ask him to say a few words later. Ali Baba and his incredible cuisine over there. Hakkı Deniz and the incredible Champion Pizza team is here. Pizza is going to keep coming and coming and coming until it's going to come out of your ears. I want to also thank House of Burgundy, of course, with all there are 5 different countries, wines represented from House of Burgundy. And Radeberger came and said, we got to do this with you, even though today, by the way, is German Reunification Day, if you wanted to know. East and West were reunified, so they're having a big party in Central Park. Lastly, of course, Cubico and the entire team, led by the incomparable Idan, of course, right here in this corner, and his partners, Uri and Teddy, and the whole team at Cubico make this community sing. I mean, this community is nothing without those guys making it happen every day. Lastly, the run of the evening is we're going to have a few people kind of talking about their experiences And then you're of course to be asking questions. A little Q&A session will follow. Those of you who want to be part of the Q&A session, don't hold back. Please, let's make this a interactive event. Just to let you know, there's a bathroom on this floor, but you can go downstairs anytime you want to the bathrooms on the 6th floor. The doors are open to go up and down the stairs. Now I want to turn it over to our board member and the board member of the Ellis Island Society, Ellis Island Honor Society. Of course, he's a man well known. No introduction is needed, but he is an amazing fellow who's made this his champion cause. Mehmet.
Thank you, Murat. So let me give you a little bit of history. I'm not going to preach to the choir. I'm well aware that you're all here because you already appreciate the opportunities. The main goal tonight is to spread the word beyond the people who are here and continue a already existing desire that you all have to change the narrative about how important immigration is to this country. In fact, I'm proud that my father found some way to get out of a small little town it's sort of the Nashville of Turkey. He was from Konya. It's where the whirling dervishes are. And so slowly but surely, by scholarship and by pushing and nudging and kindness, he came to this country, got taken in by a family in Cleveland, Ohio, the Slow Buddies, who were Jewish immigrants, who would help him because he was picking up little bottles on the beach to make a penny a bottle, but he was a surgical resident, had no money. And then from there, he sort of graduated up through the Charity of Americans, whose families had come just a generation or two earlier, to become a fairly prominent surgeon. He's 92 years old now, part of the greatest generation. And he lived through World War II in Turkey. He lived through this country for 30 years before going back there. He's understood at many levels the power of people moving back and forth in different places. And I think if we can tell the story in a more elegant, more beautiful way, it'll be easier for people to appreciate. Just walking around here and seeing the food, maybe the greatest import of all. You have pizza made by a Turk, but it's Italian pizza, with literally the bread coming, the wheat, the semolina coming from Italy. We've got Ali Baba making high quality Turkish food, although he's from Sivas, he makes food that they eat in Istanbul. And then we have, German beer, including some grapefruit concoction, which is fantastic, which probably has more alcohol than I appreciate. This is the magic of what immigration represents. The Ellis Island Medal Society, and I'm on several boards, but I don't like to be on boards. I actively avoid being on them and trying to get off them. But I joined the Ellis Island Medal Society board because I realized how powerful a tool it was. This is an organization created by Ronald Reagan, a Republican, to celebrate immigration and the role that it has played in this country. And it has every year 100 prominent folks they or their ancestors were immigrants, so pretty much every American's eligible, and they get on the board and they come along. And it's fantastic because you have the most successful elements. I mean, in my year, Oz is O-R, so the next guy next to me was Rooney, the guy who owns the Pittsburgh Steelers, right, Irish. So it's very interesting to see how many people come together, and they all contribute a little bit to the quilt that we represent. But we feel passionately about getting young entrepreneurs engaged and celebrating them, which is part of the reason we went to this network opportunity as a kickoff, because we're going to have a Ellis Island Medal Society Award together with the American Immigrant Society that I'm also on the board of. I think it's the only two boards I'm on now. The nonprofit boards with the Health Corps. Our goal is to get young people to realize that they have a voice, it matters. And so I'm going to ask you all to take your phone out now, and whatever social tools you use, because this is where the battle will be won and lost. You can tweet, Instagram story, post on Facebook, whatever you want. One of the more typical statistics that you'll hear tonight, and just state in your own words in the way that matters. You might say, for example, the average immigrant that's in America creates 3.9 jobs. You might represent that so much of Main Street now is Main Street, little town USA, is driven by immigrants who came and found us a home and they grew there. The stories are incredible. You might point out that the graduation rate for immigrants coming to this country is over 50%, which is sort of what it is for native-born Americans. There's so many things you can say. Talk about people who are next to you. Interesting stories that you've heard. How good the beer is, or how the pizza made you feel thinner, even though you're not sure that's right, what's really happening. So tell the story in your own way, but make sure your voice is not silenced, because we should have 10 times, we're expecting 200 people, we'll probably have that here. We were thinking we'd get 40 or 50. It was oversubscribed so rapidly and so shockingly, I never posted. And I have about 11 million people who follow me, but we'd probably be off the rooftop now. didn't have room. So I want you to celebrate the fact that people care, and they're here, and it matters. So with that in mind, we have a panel that Murat, you want to introduce, or should I? Yeah, Murat will introduce. Murat, by the way, he's too humble to say it on his own. Extraordinarily prominent family and individual who has made it his life's journey with Tumai, who's taking all the pictures, to really drive the American Immigrant Society to the level that it's at. He's been able to capture the attention of a lot of folks by wisely tweeting out messages that just sort of tweak you just the right way and get you followed. So if you're not already following the American Immigrant Society, probably worthwhile to have them as part of your feed. And I'm optimistic that with his very thoughtful, cogent, and well-connected ability to spread wisdom, we'll continue to elevate it up. And we'll be announcing soon the awards for the immigrant population, the young immigrant population in this country, to make sure they are seen by everyone around us. So Murat, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Why don't I have Ben, Madge, and Steve come up to sit, and then you can also go with the flow.
Well, yeah, we'll come around. Play it by ear. Yeah, let's get these things settled. Do we know which one's the troublemaker?
You don't also have to sit on the chair.
Yeah, totally. Great, all right, that sounds good. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here on this chilly, albeit lovely night. My name is Benjamin Moe, and I'm a video journalist. It's like the whale noises that emanate. Okay, let's try that. Oh, that's much better. I am a video journalist at mic.com. We're a digital news site, and we really focus on amplifying stories from underrepresented communities around America. And so the immigrant cause and the story of immigrants in America is so central to the stories that we tell. We were, some of the first people that were at the JFK airport protests, which I know Steve will mention. It was very central. And recently I've been covering political extremism and the far right in America for the past couple months. So I was down in Charlottesville, and 2 blocks away from where Heather Heyer was killed by a far right protester. And just seeing the kind of the far edges of anti-immigrant sentiment reminded me then just how important it is to fight back against that. In our history in America, and we're going to get into this, that has been so, it's not new. What we hear Trump saying about immigrants, it's not new. Anti-immigrant sentiment is sadly not an American phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon. It's tied to humans and how they act. And so I'm really excited to be here in a place where people are actively fighting against that, and not just hanging out on rooftops and eating pizza and drinking beer, but actually going out into the world and doing something about it. So just really, really, really quickly, I just want to talk about, what brings me to immigration. When I was young, my mother's a professor of modern Greek at Columbia University, and she is not Greek, but she fell in love with the country from a young age. And she went there when she was 16. She learned Greek. She made Wesleyan University get a Greek professor so she could learn modern Greek. And then she raised me and my 2 brothers as Greeks. I mean, my first word was in Greek. I feel more Greek than I do American. I go there every single summer, but I remember distinctly, PS 87, public school on the Upper West Side. My mother would come pick me up, and she would be speaking Greek, and I would dread it. The hours. It was 2:00. I knew she would come, and I was like, no, she's gonna make me look so bad. I just want to fit in with the Rileys and the Madisons and the all the kids that weren't immigrants. And now later in life, as I've grown older, speaking Greek and feeling a part of the Greek community is probably the most important thing to me. It makes me me. It gives me a sense of joy and belonging. And so I just think that really reflects this idea that they're the forces that try to stamp out immigration and cultural diversity are so strong, and they're embedded in us from a young age, and it's so important to resist that. And so I hope that can kind of be the tenor of tonight. So without further ado, I want to introduce our 2 amazing panelists. Steve Choi, to my right here, is the executive director of the New York Coalition for Immigration.
The New York Immigration Coalition.
New York Immigration Coalition, exactly. And they represent a broad panoply of groups across New York State that the different immigrant groups from different immigrant communities. And Steve, the group is really impressive. One of the biggest things they did is on Saturday, the day after Trump signed the executive order banning immigration from 7 Muslim majority countries in late January, Steve's team put out the message Saturday morning, like, we need to go to JFK, we need to help these people get out. And tens of thousands of people showed up. And it's been credited in the media that protest is actually pushing the Trump administration to revise the ban. Not that the second one was any better than the first.
Or the third.
Or the third, yeah. And then to Steve's right is Madge Thomas, who is the Global Policy Director for Global Citizens, which just had an incredibly successful festival in Central Park. They used to be the Global Poverty Project. Now they're Global Citizens, and they advocate for getting rid of poverty around the world. So I just want to jump right into it. I guess I'll start with Steve. Could you tell us your immigrant story?
Sure. So my family is from South Korea. Actually, they are from a place in North Korea, and they made their way south during the Korean War. And at the time in the mid-70s, South Korea was nowhere near the kind of economic powerhouse that it is today. And so they immigrated to the United States in 1975. My older brother was born in South Korea. He was 1 year old at the time. And I was born here, and my parents they came here with the proverbial couple $100 in their pocket, and that was it. But they eventually, my parents had a dream of becoming doctors, and so we moved to Westchester County, and I grew up essentially in Westchester County. And we were the only immigrant family on the block. And, very similar to what you were mentioning, Benjamin, at home, we ate kimchi and we ate all sorts of stuff like that. We had big jars of kimchi in my fridge, and my friends would come over because at the time Westchester County was overwhelmingly white, and they would say like, "Oh, who cut up your brother and put him in a jar in the kitchen and put him in the refrigerator?" And I did grow up in this kind of environment where I think people just didn't know what to make of me, and they would say, "Are you Chinese? Are you Japanese?" And I would say, "No, I'm Korean." And it just didn't register exactly what that was about. Then I started to work with the Korean community, and at the time the Korean immigrant community was very much focused in Flushing, Queens, which is pretty close to here. And I saw firsthand all the kinds of struggles that Korean immigrants faced and Asian immigrants faced, especially in a place like Flushing, where Asian immigrants and Korean immigrants were really part of a success story, but also engendered a lot of resentment from the longtime residents who said, "Hey, we are losing our neighborhood. We are losing what makes us Flushing, and it's becoming a place that I just don't recognize anymore." And we saw that kind of sentiment. So I became the executive director of the New York Immigration Coalition 4 years ago, literally right when we thought that we would see comprehensive immigration reform. It passed in the Senate by an overwhelming margin, and then it went down in flames, just like every effort in immigration legislation. You fast forward to last year, where we had a candidate for president. I'm going to get very political here. But we had a candidate for president who, as a candidate, started out his campaign talking about Mexicans as rapists and criminals and saying that he would stop Muslim migration to this country. And he ran, I think what's pretty clear, the single most anti-immigrant campaign in the history of the United States. And I think everybody was disabused of the notion that he would change when he became president. In his very first week, he signed 4 executive orders calling for the creation of this pointless southern border wall, authorizing the creation of a deportation force that has really cast terror into New York's 4 million immigrants, and basically dismantling our refugee system, and of course, instituting the Muslim refugee ban. So it has been just a real shock to the system. And I think, I speak on behalf of our 200 member agencies working with the Latino, the Asian, the African, the Muslim communities, that they are frankly in terror. And they continue to live in fear and they've done so for the past 8 months. But at the same time, when we've seen this tremendous outpouring of support from people who say, you know what? I am an immigrant as well, and I think that is the silver lining to all the crazy stuff that we've seen with the Trump administration.